Hello, everyone. It is Sunday today, and I'm very happy to be meeting today with Maria Lupita Gurule. This is Magic is Real. This is the podcast where we talk about all things metaphysical and spiritual with a focus on near death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences. I will do a brief introduction about why I have Maria here today. I am very honored. I have met Maria in person at the International Association for Near Death Studies conference in Phoenix, which was 2 years ago, and we had such a wonderful time. And Maria is a near death experiencer. Her NDE happened about 25 years ago, and we will touch on that a bit. And I think it's also important to mention that a lot of people glamorize near death experiences because the experience itself is so miraculous and perception shifting and worldview changing. And also, it can be very difficult to come back into this dense world. And I can tell that, like me, Maria is a very sensitive empath. She's also, I don't know if you say psychic medium, I do, if that's why I call myself an evidential psychic medium. You also do soul readings. And so I want to hear about that as well, what you offer, how you receive this information. But I would like to start first of all by, of course, thanking you for being here with me. It means the world to me, and hopefully my listeners, I believe it will inspire them as well. So thank you for that. And I'd love to know about you. I'd love to know more about you, what your background is, what your prior beliefs may have been, etc., as it pertains to your spiritual journey. And then we will just go from there.
All righty, that's excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love just the title of your channel alone, that magic is real. And so I'm so excited just to have an open conversation and wherever that may lead. And I am deeply honored to be here as well. So thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, it's hard to believe that Phoenix was already a year ago. And I'm so excited about this. So, to answer the question, so my name is Maria Lupita Gurule. I am located in Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico, or New Mexico. And I had my NDE 25 years ago. Prior to that, I had already had one very difficult pregnancy. I had toxemia with both of the pregnancies. Transitioned into like a life-threatening situation, which is called HELP, HELLP. It's an acronym that stands for hemoglobin, or hemolysis, better yet, hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelets. It's a life-threatening condition for both the mother and the child. And so I had that with both of these pregnancies. And so both of my pregnancies were induced. And because I had such difficult pregnancies, and they were life-threatening, both of them, it was decided that because I was starting to have these same complications with my second pregnancy, that I would have a tubal ligation, which is tying the tubes, preventing myself from having any additional children because of these life-threatening conditions. Prior to that, around this time, I had my first at age 25. I was 27 when my NDE happened. And I was born and raised very traditional Hispanic Catholic. And I had no awareness of near death experiences prior to this. My mom was a very spiritual person, very open. She grew up half in New Mexico and half in San Francisco. And so she, had a lot of experiences rather than being so isolated in a small community. She was, more expensive. And so she also had like a lot of experiences, spiritually transformative experiences. And both my parents were very mystical. There's a Sikh community here in New Mexico. It's called the Hacienda of the Guru Ramdas, where my father was actually really good friends with the Guru Ramdas, and that kind of like opened up into other spirituality as well as the very traditional Hispanic Catholic. So it's kind of an interesting mix of where my background and my upbringing kind of like it had both. But near-death experiences were something that I was not familiar with at all. Psychic mediums were something that, like, ooh, we don't mess with those kind of things. That it's like so taboo because it was, thought to be completely misunderstood. So, when I had my near-death experience, again, it was with my second child, and I died on the day that she was born, not because of her birth, but because of the surgery that was planned. And so I had an epidural with her, which is an epidural, meaning just outside of the dural protective sheath that's on our spine, our spinal cord. So they kept the catheter in my back so that when I would have the surgery, it was supposed to be just local anesthesia. I was supposed to have a spinal block, and the spinal block is where they pass the barrier of that dural protective sheath and they give it directly into the spinal cord. And that's intended to just numb from wherever that location, the waist down, so that there's like absolutely no signals of sensations. I was supposed to be completely awake, alert, conscious through the surgery, and I had a reaction to it. So I had a very, very chaotic, life-threatening situation with my son when he was born. He was born 10 weeks early. My daughter was not as early, but she was about 3 weeks prior to her. So she was considered more or less, full term in a safe range. So I had the near death experience because of the spinal block, and it I could see where, like, if it was given general anesthesia and then actually put under, that it would seem as though like that would make sense for this experience. But because it stopped my heart, it stopped my lungs. They had to intubate me, which is the tube in the mouth, and to actually breathe for me, and then they had to resuscitate me. I was being wheeled out of the birthing room and was being taken to a different area in the hospital, which is the surgery room and a different floor. And so by the time they transported me into the elevator, trying to resuscitate me, and through the whole experience, I was gone for maybe, eight, what I call 8 Earth minutes, but it felt like an entire eternity on the other side. I had an incredible experience while there, and so much of it has. Um, I say that it is still an active presence in my life today, and I can explain that a little bit more because while I was there, it felt like an eternity. It felt like I had an entire lifetime on the other side inside of those 8 minutes in preparation for my return. I didn't want to come back. I had a really incredible, beautiful experience. When I first arrived, I knew that I wasn't meant to stay there, but I was refusing to come back. I didn't want to. It was pure love, pure bliss. I had incredible, like pure white energy that it had like music, celestial music and singing, but there were no singing voices. There was no instruments. It was like the energy itself was alive. And I saw this most beautiful, translucent, divine mother, what I know to be our Blessed Mother. And then through her, like translucent, larger than life, there was another image, like of what I would now call, to be Jesus. But what struck me is that there were these most magnificent intertwined hearts, like one was blue and one was red, but through it was this most pure white light. And from that most incredible energy, I was like, I'm home. Nothing else mattered. I could, before this whole transition, I could see my body there, but I didn't have a connection to what was happening. I had a little confusion in the beginning of like, well, why is this person here? And like, oh, that's me floating above them in a way. So I had after that first initial experience, it transitioned into working with what I now know to be my guide and my divine counsel, something that we all have access to. And so I had an entire experience that we'll talk about more in a lot of detail as it comes up, But from that first initial experience, that like having lived the lifetime on the other side, I had a very difficult time returning to my body. After I had this really incredible experience on the other side, I wanted to come back. By the time, like, it felt like an entire lifetime on the other side, first doing a life review, gaining the understanding of the things that had happened to me. There was a phase of also like releasing the human imprint being taken to this most sacred temple that was like a healing temple. And it kind of like an acid bath, like burned away the human imprint. And from there, it opened up into like this greater understanding, more of a connection as operating as my, higher self and receiving information, training and knowledge, understanding who we are, what we are, why we're here, how this process works. And like training, it was like going to like a like university is the best way that I could describe it, is receiving all of this incredible knowledge and training and preparation for my return, because it felt like I now know, like having a mission, having a purpose and a reason for the return. And so while there on the other side and releasing, healing, integrating, understanding, I had this experience of like being taken ultimately to this vast valley. And it was like as though I was standing on the top of the hillside with these incredible beings. And each of these experiences, I'll just pause for a moment and digress, that I had like three of these council members that would assist me with the life review and, what had happened and in the life itself. Then there was like an additional three individuals that helped me with my healing in that healing temple. There were another three that were assisting me with the understanding of life, our incarnations, the earth plane, our soul lessons, why we're here. And so a lot of training. And then those additional three, like, were joined by the ultimate other final three. So it was like four groups of three people, a total of 12 altogether, and my one main guide. But taken to that vast valley, like standing on a hilltop and seeing like eternal, like hills rolling, it was even as though I could see like this cosmic connection, the galaxies, the universe, from standing in this place. And there below was like this valley of flowers of every imaginable color. So if you can imagine like every color of red, like on your background, but every variance of red, from, rose to the deepest of crimson and maroons and all of these colors, and colors unlike anything I've ever seen. And it felt like there were like thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands of these most beautiful flowers. And then being told that somehow I was going to like touch all of these flowers, if you will. Each one of them had an essence, and I understood it to be that they were souls. And it was like an analogy or a symbology of like all the people that we're incarnate with in this valley was this, multiple souls. And that I didn't understand, like, well, how can one like impact all of these flowers, these most beautiful souls? And then in that place of seeing this most beautiful like breeze come through, and it was as though this wave of energy and all the flowers began to move like in unison, almost like a sea of flowers. And I understood that it's like we are all interconnected. We're all connected. We're all together somehow. And then I could envision like the roots underneath of where we're all connected in this same group. And I understood that each of these rolling hills had its own valley of flowers, if you will. And in that place of seeing like the unity, this perfection of this beauty, how special and unique every single one of us are. And I wanted to be here. I finally understood through all of that that Nothing was done to me. It was a choice that I made. I needed a course correction through this experience, this NDE, because I was resisting, pursuing any of these higher metaphysical things. At that time, I was married. I had now my second child. I was working full time. I wanted the house, the picket fence, the dog. Don't mess with, this other stuff because it's just too complicated. But I knew that my life was felt up until then like something was missing. Like it kept like feeling like a struggle, like something inside of me that I was looking for or trying to gain, and I couldn't pin, pinpoint it. I couldn't, fully understand it. And in that place, I finally understood like I'm missing me. I'm missing my soul's essence that we're taught how to disconnect from. And it was an entire process of this fusion of bringing me back to that first essential self. Because when we're born into the realm and the world of this earth plane. And part of the rules that function this is that we're born into like an amnesic state. We have amnesia. We don't remember. We have full remembrance and full knowing when we're first born. And then in the process of indoctrination, our upbringings, our environments, whatever happens happening in our own family as well as society, it's like systematically taken down and taken away. And then by the time, we are 7, 8 years old, it's like it's gone. We forget who we are. We don't remember those things. And then those children who do are taught, and like I was like, well, get back to work. It's Saturday morning. What do you mean you want to watch cartoons? We've got chores to do. So we have that taken out of us, and then we begin to understand these limited principles of which the world has operated for an eternity now, like for the last 14,000 years. So the purpose and the reason of my wanting to come back was to hold it, to remember it, that as an adult, to have full remembrance of the sacredness of our soul. And that's the part of us that is missing while we're here. And I wanted to bring this feeling, this energy, this essence. I made an agreement that I would return and that I would share these things. This is what I initially wanted to do, my whole purpose of coming here to this earth plane to begin with. So it was reawakened within me. And that was with that desire, with that understanding. Oh, I want to be here. This is such an important time on earth. It is like transformational onto a level of which we have not experienced in an age. And that when we first began to experience this soul awakening on the earth, way back in Atlantean and Lemurian and Egyptian and Mayan times, that there was another energy that came on the planet, and that there are those individuals that are meant to be here at this time to reawaken and remember and to help others hold on to it. And then the children that are being born, so my two children are part of that category of like these incredible new souls being born to this earth to help transform it. And so I know I'm skipping all over the place to make it kind of quickly, but and there's a lot more that goes into detail about my NDE, but these are the things that are so passionate. This is a result of my NDE. And I'm so excited to be able to have a platform such as this and to talk to somebody so open and who is also familiar and also very attuned. And I did call myself a psychic medium in the beginning, um, which it took a long time for me to make peace with, honestly. I think that the word psychic back 25 years ago was, especially 25 years ago, was like, oh, like, we don't mess with these kinds of things. And then to be considered, a medium, and that's how it actually first opened for me, is upon my return, I felt so off. Like things did not work right. I felt like I made the wrong mistake, made the wrong choice, and that I made a mistake in wanting to come back. Because even though it felt like I had lived an entire lifetime on the other side, learning all of these incredible spiritual things, I still had to come back into my life in the exact same place where I left it, with the same feelings, the same situations, the same people, the same circumstances. And I had to transform my way of being. And at first, I did not, I mean, it was so, like you said, I love that you said people romanticize the NDEs, but we really don't talk about like the struggle. And I struggled for 3 solid years. I had what I would have called now like these violent flashbacks. Violent in the sense of they were so jarring to me that I couldn't reconcile like really what it was. I had no one to help me understand or explain, what I was experiencing, what I had gone through, where I went, and why I was beginning to sense and feel the world so differently. And I had the NDE at a really difficult time in my life. There was a lot that was going on around that time, probably one of the most challenging moments. And having to overcome all of that and still come back and heal from it. So it didn't erase anything. It gave me new understanding that I had to learn how to apply, but it was up to me to do. It wasn't like, everything's perfect. You're now in this thing, you're back here and it's all wonderful and great. It was like, oh my God, I had this experience. I don't know how to figure it out. What do I do with this? How do I make sense of what is actually happening around me? And the evidential mediumship, okay, that's what it first opened up to. I began sensing and feeling people who had crossed, and I didn't understand what that was in the beginning. I would have images, feeling sensations, and being with other people around me. And I would begin to share with them and have courage to share and ask. And then kind of word got out. And so I was working full time, had a regular job, normal person. Um, and coworkers like this would happen with, and I guess they would begin to tell their family. And I started getting phone calls of like, well, hey, you work with so and so and you help them. Can I talk to you? And so it had a life of its own. It like began to pull me in this direction. And it's not something that I chose and not something that I sought after. And in fact, I resisted it because I didn't understand what was happening to me. I remember having a conversation with my grandma Hinoveva, which is my mom's mom. And it was through her wisdom of helping me to understand and saying, that God gives gifts to every single one of us. And it's up to us to be able to choose and use it in the way that it was intended. And because I was struggling so much, she shared with me and said, well, ask and pray for it to be taken away. And I did. I was like, I don't want any part of this. I just take it away. And it happened more, which forced me to actually really seek to make peace with it. And so my prayer changed from, okay, if you can't take this away from me, then teach me how to use it. And I began to really make peace with it deep within myself, and then I would feel the peace that would come through it. So when I would begin to meet with strangers and I would tell them things like in passing, and I think that I remember the pivotal moment when I finally understood of what a gift and a treasure this could actually be and to use it in service. So it was a meeting with a person that I had never met before. We were meant to pair and share during this group event. And so we all kind of broke out into groups. And then I had that familiar feeling that I started to discover. My ears would burn. I got like heat. And then I would get this high pitched noise. And then I would feel like almost like a vacuum. And then my stomach would churn, and I would be like, oh God, here we go. Okay, 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 here, okay. And then I would finally pause and say, sometimes this thing happens to me. Do you mind if I share with you? And he gave me permission. And so I began to describe the scene of like seeing a shelf. And I said, I see a shelf with this like beautiful thing that's on it, and it's next to a photograph. And I described the photograph, and he was like shocked. And made a joke of it and was like, he's like, is that your bedroom or mine? I'm like, well, it's not mine, so it must be yours. And he was like, okay, tell me more. And so I began to describe it a little bit more. And before we knew it, I was describing a photograph that he had with his partner. I was describing the urn that was on the shelf. And I said, you pass by it every day and kind of kiss it, like kind of just acknowledge it, if you will. And then as all of these things went on, within 10 to 15 minutes, I mean, he was in tears. And he was like, I always wanted to know if he was okay. It's been 8 years, but I didn't believe in any of this. And the things that you've told me are so spot on. And I know he's okay now. And in that moment, seeing his reaction, and I'm like, "Dude, this makes sense to you? Like, really? Like, okay." So then he kind of gave me this open permission, and that was probably one of the first times with a complete stranger, just going all there without hesitation. And after that experience, I sat in my vehicle and I cried for about an hour. At least it felt like an hour. Because I thought, oh, wow, okay, now I understand. I understand the peace and what could actually be given through. So it started off as mediumship, and as I spoke with individuals, it started to transform into being able to sense and feel what's happening in their lives in present day, and then events that happened in the past. Sometimes people would start, looking at me, and I would describe something and be like, "No, that I don't know what you're talking about." And I'd be like, okay, well, I don't know what that is, so I'll just let it be. And then people would say, like, that thing you told me 6 months ago just happened. And I was like, oh, wait, no wonder it didn't make sense. I would never call it like looking into the future, because to me it doesn't feel that way. I'm just sharing what is so evident to me in that moment that it feels like it already happened, only to discover things hadn't happened yet. And I think one of the most profound experiences of that is I was meeting with a lady who wanted to connect with her animal. So, animal communication as well, by the way. So, describing she had just lost her precious dog, and she was wanting to find out more information. So I started to give her this, seeing the dog and seeing what happened. And she's looking at me and she's like, no, I no, that didn't match. And I said, okay. So I let that go, and then like reoriented myself, and then reconnected. And then it was all about her dog. 5 years later, she reached out to me and she said, I'm devastated. She said, everything that you described in the way that dog passed, that's how my dog just passed. And the dog was not even born yet. Okay. So I saw it tangled up in a cord, unfortunately. But and what was so shocking with the whole thing is that I saw it so clearly and so vividly, but the dog had not yet been born. She didn't even have the dog just yet. And of course, none of this occurred. So what I was describing was in the future, 5 years later. But in the moment, I was like, God, I got that wrong. I'm like, oh, okay. So I've learned to trust so implicitly the things that I'm receiving. And if it doesn't make sense to a person, I say, okay, well, just hold on to that. Just set it aside and just see what comes. And so that has, I can't tell you how many times people have come back to me to say, like, wow, that hadn't happened, or what you said makes more sense to me today, or whatever the case might be. So then it transformed into mediumship, current experiences and advice, past experiences to have the healing, and then ultimately these future experiences. And I can't tell when it's happening. I can't say, I'm going to share with you what's going to happen 5 years from now, because that's not how it goes. It's just telling them like what I see and what I get. And then that started to transform. Then it started off after that, even, of feeling something even greater, like this divine energy, and then started talking to them about purpose and what they're here to do. I love having tools to be able to help the people that I work with, and it's selfish because I started off with me wanting to understand and heal myself, and so I have a ton of certifications and trainings and like energy work and sound healing and resonance and all of these different things. And so one of the tools that I was went back to school for was to get my certification. I am a certified medical support, a clinical hypnotherapist. I went back to school at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America, and it was to help people utilize the power of their mind to be able to help them heal, their body and their experiences. But there's also modules in there for like regression therapy. So when it came to the module of past life regression, interlife regression, and it's not really regressing, it's like looking at it. So like potential past lives, and also there are it was called interlife, the space in between before when we're incarnate, before we're incarnate. This is the interesting thing that for me, I always have the experience first, and then the validation comes later. And what I mean by that is this is the perfect example. I'm familiar now with my own having a near-death experience. And when I went back to this, when I was at the Hypnotherapy Academy, one of the things was looking at like our interlife, and it took me straight back into being on the other side where I was at and where we all are after, in on the other side, when we cross over. So it's like taking consciousness and extending it into that place and space. So when we were at the module of these regression therapies, one of them was a past life regression. And so we had an opportunity to ask, in our group settings, because there's a lot of training and hands-on and practicum that's actually done during this training. So I was a group of 5 people. Uh, there was 4 of us all together, but the fifth one was our coach. And so we were all, grouped together, and over the course of a couple of days, we each took turns being the one who was regressed and then the person who is the therapist. And so we're practicing these techniques, and we're all in a group setting. So there's individuals who are watching the process as they're reading their manuals. There's the coach who's also like helping and to assist if we get into a situation. And so we all rotated. Well, I was the very, very last person to be regressed, and we got to pick 2 different questions. I don't even remember what the other one was, because the question was, take me to the lifetime that is most impacting this lifetime. And so, the other 3 people went before me, and they had, fairly, modern past lives. One of them was like in a Renaissance time. The other was like in an Asian time, but like maybe 300 years ago. So, fairly recent history. And one of the first things we ask is, okay, now go to the lifetime that is most impacting and then see yourself. What do you see? Describe it. And all I could see was like this glow around my body. And they asked, well, okay, now move forward. Okay, what do you dress like? And I didn't really see any particular type of clothing or dress, like dressings, I should say. We also ask, do you look female? Do you look male? And it felt very androgynous to me, but more like to the female energy. And so it was like, okay, well, they couldn't pinpoint in this, what I'm sharing, like where I'm at. They're like, okay, well, move forward. Where is the next thing? What do you see around you? Like broaden your image. And so I saw myself like in this like encapsulated device. And then it was as though my consciousness came out of that. And I was looking at this most incredible, um, I now know it's a window, but it seemed so much larger. And I could see Earth from the distance. And so that made no sense to me. And as I was looking at Earth, all I could say was, oh, I love the people. I want to be here again because I love the people. And so they're like, okay, now fast forward. Now, where are you at now? And I couldn't decipher because it felt like one was very lush, very green, and then all of a sudden I would see very arid, like scenery and sand. And then, but it was also very lush. And then, so I couldn't quite pinpoint it. I would see these sacred temples, these faces they were humanistic, but the ears and the face had a different shape. I could see these grand pillars. So when they're asking, okay, well, what do you look like now? And I had an ever so slight, like primarily skin toned, but there was an undertone of like this bluish color, like a bluish gray. But we were very, very tall, and there was several of us that I was with, maybe like a group of 12, if you will. And I was about 14 feet tall, and I could see the people and how I loved them, and I just loved the people. Then it transitioned into this scenery where there was so many people and we were there to teach. And I said spontaneously, like, oh my gosh, it's the alignment and it's happening again. And so they're like asking me questions in this regression, and I'm describing it, and I'm saying there is a universal alignment, not just with planets, but also with galaxies. And I could see like suddenly being out in the galaxy. But at this time where I was at in the planet, they were asking, like, okay, so what kind of age is this? And I saw popped out of my mouth was like 30,000 years ago. And I'm like, and I'm listening to myself say these things because it's like in a deep hypnotic, state where this information is just pouring out of me. And I don't even understand the things that I'm describing. And so there was more to it that came out of that session. And by the time we were done, like everybody was staring at me, and I'm in the chair and I'm just embarrassed because I'm like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I'm describing. And the next day, one of the people that were in the school, but not in my group, I was describing my experience. And he said, this is exactly why I'm here. This is what I want to do. I want to do these past life regressions. And he's like, have you heard of Dolores Cannon? I'm like, I don't know who she is. He gave me the book called The Convoluted Universe. And then I read about it. It made me cry because I thought, okay, I'm not crazy. Whatever this is, it was something real that opened up inside of me that I was sharing. And it's shown and told that in that state, we're actually tapping into consciousness, and it's a free flow um, of sharing. These are things that I was not familiar with at all. When I got the book, I realized, oh wow, this has been in existence. And Dolores Cannon was regressing people, from other locations in the universe, back in since the 1970s. But that was not something that I was familiar with. And so that's what I describe. I have the experience first, and then the validation comes after. Because if I had heard or learned about any of this, I would have doubted myself. I would have been like, I'm just repeating it from something that I heard before, and I would doubt myself. So instead, it was like, I feel crazy. I'm embarrassed. I don't know what this is. Like, can we do a reset? Because like I had no experience or foundation for it. And then when the book was given to me, then I understood and I had the knowledge and the information about it. So what I know of myself is that, we are, and what I, of all, not I shouldn't say all of us, there are many of us on the planet at this time that have been a part of Earth's soul creation, that we were meant to be a species created, that we would open up and have an awakened soul, that we would be able to attune to and remember who we are and hold the sacred essence, that we would be able to connect with this spirit energy that is available to us and to rise up into the fullest potential of what it means to be human. That we are human. We have this most incredible mind that is able to connect and extend through any time and space. and that we are incredible beings, and what we're capable of being on this human planet, is something far more incredible than we can even begin to understand. And this is what I'm most passionate about. So even though my NDE had been 25 years ago, and yes, I had an incredible experience, and yes, I was able to open up into all of these things, but it has been streaming from before then. It was just a moment to awaken me, to have the memory, the remembrance, and it built up into this. So I went to the Hypnotherapy Academy of America in 2013. So this was already 13 years after my NDE. And again, it's been building even more. And so from that experience, I had a practice prior to 2018. So I had a physical location, a place where people can actually come to my office, and we would either have like a mediumship session. Sometimes they just needed to understand situations happening in life. I have also part of this was shamanic training. So, like, I have formal teachings in the indigenous, ways of the Andes in Peru. I have formal training in that for over 15 years. And so it's again all of this building up of all of this. And so in my office, when people would come and visit, those who I had worked with enough and developed a rapport, if we needed additional tools for like energy healing, energy work, or then, it would be like either hypnotherapy or even a regression session to be able to assist them and tap into their soul's ability for their healing or their memory or whatever needed to occur. And spontaneously, in one of the sessions, I had a client who had a lot of difficulty saying what they were seeing because it was just so it's a strange experience, when you're aware, but yet there's something speaking through you, things that, may not make sense. And so a person was having difficulty expressing. But because of my background, I was able to be in what's called like a tandem experience with them. I could see in my mind's eye what they were feeling and experiencing in their regression. And so spontaneously, I started to describe to them, okay, do you see that in front of you? And they would be like, yes. And I said, okay, now what about, just leading them through their session and then opening up into their sharing. It was like I was right there with them. And because this person had difficulty, like I was able to see what their experience was and then share it with them. And so then it opened up into being able to tell people about their past lives. And so oftentimes in present day, when we're having sessions, I can tell a person of, part of their past experiences and the things that have actually come out from it, and to understand how we carry what I now know to be karma, or to have like a karmic experience, which means just creating balance of what they carried forward from these past lives into their current lives, and then being able to share that with them too. So this has been building up, for all of these years of all of these different tools, and to be immersed in it. Where back when I first started, I worked for somebody else, and I worked for somebody else all the way up until 2013. I was raising kids. I had a husband. I had the house still had to manage, so still living life through all of it. And then I was building my practice because, like I said, so many people were reaching out that I decided, okay, I don't want them coming to my home, and I need a private place to be able to share. So I had a little teeny tiny office in a place called the Lofts in Santa Fe. And so I began to meet with people like in the evenings and the weekends. And so I started to build this practice while I was working full time. And then it suddenly like came to the point of where the scales had to tip, where I was always so desiring of having my own space and my own, to do this full time and to dedicate my life to it. And in 2013, it was, I was able to experience that. So it started off very difficult, very traumatic, thinking something was wrong with me. I actually went to see four different doctors to get different opinions. Every single one of them said, that I was very stressed and that I was very careful too to describe what was happening to me because my dear uncle, my mother's brother, does have schizophrenia. And so I'm very careful to not like saying I'm seeing things or I'm hearing voices because there could have been a huge misdiagnosis of myself. And so I was careful with that, but they all wanted to put me on antidepressants. I tried them for a while and it didn't take away what was happening to me. So I understood, okay, well, that's not the cause and that's not the source. And so many people who have these experiences are misdiagnosed in that way. I couldn't speak of my NDE and for anybody, medically to be able to, explain or understand what happened. In my own, religion, that this is something that is not agreed to. So when if I would say that, you know, connecting with spirits or having an ability to, like, if they would say, the Bible doesn't use the word psychics, but they would actually say, like, witches or something. Like, so in the whole thing of Deuteronomy is like, okay, like, thou shalt not. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is like not good. And so that's when I wanted it to stop. And then I finally came to, so anybody watching is trying to make peace with, okay, reconciling religion and faith and the Bible with all of this other metaphysical stuff. I finally came across and I thought, okay, I better understand what I'm talking about. So I started looking up in the Bible of like, okay, well, where's all these things about like intuition or healing? And I finally discovered Corinthians 12, which it talks about gifts of the Holy Spirit, and that prophecy is one of them, and healing is another, and tongues and interpretation of tongues, and even faith is considered one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And in there, it actually talks about like it is recommended that you seek these things. And so find that, and my church never ever talked about Corinthians 12 and developing gifts of the Holy Spirit. Instead it was always the opposite of like not doing it. So there was a huge discrepancy in my own experience, even within my own family members, of like, people thinking that, something was wrong with me or that this was not good. Um, the person who was probably most outspoken for that, that it like literally created a rift within my family for 8 years because I decided to step into this professionally, and it was really misunderstood. And only after this family member's passing, only at so 9 days after his passing, came to me in a vision with the Blessed Mother and apologized and said, I am so sorry that I was filled with so much fear while I was alive, but she has shown me who you are and what you are and who you serve, and that it's her, so that I made the decision, if God isn't going to take this away from me, then may I learn how to use it with right balance and in service. And that's what my life has been about, is like to be able to be of service to others. And that it's a great honor for me to be able to meet with individuals and to be allowed, basically we're seeing their God spark, the most purest essence of their being. And that is something that is so sacred and so profound. And so every person that I am able to meet with, that's the place where I come from. How can I be of service? What needs to be said? And it's been a great beauty and a blessing for all of that. So, oh my goodness, I can talk on forever. So I'm going to pause here and let you ask any questions that you may want, because I'm
I
like,
didn't
where do
even
I go
need
from here?
I didn't even need to ask questions because everything you spoke to and about was what I would have wanted to know and
Mm,
more. that I wouldn't have known to ask. And you're so
Mhm.
eloquent and you are able to articulate your experience so well. So I thank you. That was like, it's Super Soul Sunday for me. It felt like the
Mhm.
best TED Talk I ever heard. So I want to thank you for sharing that. It's everything I'd want to know and more. And so much in there that resonates with me.
Mhm.
So much so that I'm still just absorbing and processing. I love what I'm just going to pick some one point. Something that I find really interesting is what you just talked about, where in the Bible it says that this is a gift given to us. And a lot of people in there, because they are very religious and stuck on the this is allowed, this isn't allowed. And I can understand because there's also a lot of truth in the Bible
Right.
that tells us that what we're doing goes against God because we are supposed to be getting this directly from God. We are mere mortals and it is not our place to do God's work. That is
Mm.
a something that I completely disagree with because I believe that we are God, that we are fractals
Yes.
of God
Yes.
and that we are simply expressions of God. And so
Yes.
when someone says to me, you're connecting with the devil, you're uh, God doesn't want you doing this work, then why did God give me this ability? And also, if I am connecting with demonic entities, why would they be sending loving, supportive, healing messages, but the person's loved ones on the other side wouldn't be? So we
Mhm.
can't connect with our loved ones, but we can connect with demonic entities. What do you want to
Right.
say about that?
Oh, I have so much to say. I'm like,
I
oh,
know I'm very passionate about this.
so am I. Okay. This is
Yeah.
excellent, Shannon, because I am truly passionate about this. So much of my attempt to stop it, pray to for it to be taken, was because of my misunderstanding and the teachings that I was taught. So in Deuteronomy, where it actually does say that like we shouldn't, and when people like would put comments of like, "Oh, you're messing with the devil," and I'm like, or people shouldn't mess with it, or you should read the Bible. I'm like, you should read the Bible too. Go to
Yeah.
Corinthians 12, read all about this. What I understood is that there was a time when this was not open, this was not allowed. People were misusing it and like abuse of it. There are discarnate spirits on the planet. Those are very different than souls that have crossed over. Okay. Very, very, very different. And so when people place comments of like, oh, you shouldn't mess with this, I'm like, I absolutely agree with you. People should not be messing with things that they don't understand.
Mhm.
Okay, I agree. Because we could delve into, so when my perfect example would be, say, Ouija boards. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ouija boards is a connecting and opening up into realms that actually has like those discarnates. We do live in a spectrum of entities and energies that do coexist with us. And that there is a spectrum, just like we have benevolent beings of light and angels that are protective and guiding. We also have all of this other energies that are darker. So that was also my biggest fear when I began to like make peace with this, is I had to set very clear and right intentions. Like I will only allow myself to work with the beings of the light, and that, so I had to really understand and settle that, because when we come to it from a place of fear, it is like where our radio station, our frequency is attuned. So when we step into this in a place with ill intent or potentially fear, we could attract energies that are of that same and like frequency that are not our loved ones. It's an entire other thing. Okay. So I'll show this to you super quickly, that this is, it says a medicine bundle. It is part of my indigenous teachings of the Andes that I work with, and understanding, that like heavy energy clearings, working with heavy energy. Hucha is the word that they would actually utilize. And so there are individuals like medicine people of the planets. Like if we talk about ayahuasca and other types of things, those are medicinal plants that open up into these other realms and for people and seers and all of these other things. I myself have not done ayahuasca, so I can't even speak to that. I have not had that experience. But there are things in this world that indigenous peoples have always understood. My language in Spanish would be curandera, which is a healer. To curar means to heal. So a curandera is a healer woman, or a curandero is the male aspect. These are people who have trained, as I have. God, for 25 years, this has been my world. And so when we speak to the Bible of it, there was that time when, to not mislead or misguide people. And even to this day, people misuse and misunderstand. So instead, it's like, what do we actually tap into? So that's the gifts of the Holy Spirit. When we're actually tapping into and understanding, you are awakening a deep inner part of ourselves of which we all have and what we all are. Every single one of us is an intuitive being. And why? Because we have what I too also call the God spark. We have the spark of God within us. We are an individuated personal aspect of God, personality. Okay. So we have our divinity and we are a personal aspect of that divinity. So personality is like the combination of personal and divinity together. And so that's the way I like to describe it, is that that is us. We have a portal. And our belief in it is not necessary. Our belief is not a prerequisite for this to be truth. You are alive because of this energy. So, anybody watching, we have this life force inside of us that animates these physical bodies. But our who and what we are is not limited to just our brain. Okay. So people who would say, like, okay, well, the brain shuts off at the end of death and it's just firing all these lights and all of these things, that's not true. That we are an eternal soul. We are energy is never destroyed nor lost, it only transforms. We are a streaming of consciousness, and in fact the greater, bigger part of ourself is safely anchored on the other side, and only a portion of our awareness is actually here. So when we go to sleep, I would oftentimes find myself on the other side or someplace else in this world. But that happens to us every single night while we sleep. That while our bodies need to shut down to rejuvenate and reset itself, we also have the same ability of our soul. And so, like, we are this divine essence. We are alive because of its life force. That's the part of ourselves that vacates the physical body, at our moment of final death. In our case, where I had an NDE, like, my body was still viable. It was still tethered to it, did not fully release and disconnect from it. Otherwise, I would have stayed on the other side and died. Even though I did die, my heart stopped, my lungs stopped, they had to resuscitate. There's a window in there. My soul is still tethered to the body. It did not fully disconnect from it just yet. And so that's what makes it like almost like a holding space, to be able to, yeah, my body is viable, still healthy and good enough to be able to return and to animate the body just with a different place of awareness. And so we are all part of this divine. We do need to understand what we're working with. Because there is another energy and an essence on the planet. It's like we can even talk about that as like the two earths. And it's an energy, a vibration. There's an energy on the planet that is very heavy, hard, and dense, where we feel hopeless and helpless and disconnected because we've lost a part of ourselves. That's a very dense place to live in. And I was there. And then so breaking through it by awakening, connecting, feeling our divinity, that there is a divine intelligence that orchestrates this universe and we are a part of it. And that we are all inter and intra connected in this field of energy, what I call the web of life. It's a sacred living library. And that's our consciousness. So we have what I call the consciousnet, so like just like we can look up the internet and the internet's all connected with all of these servers all over the planet. Well, where do we think that that technology comes from? We do it, so that's what we are. Our consciousness is interconnected into a field of energy, and but we carry the personal stream of it inside of our physical bodies. So that's yeah, I can go on. I can go on and on and on and
No,
on.
that's beautiful. I think there is that misconception that we are separate from one another, separate
Mhm.
from God. As we know, separation is an illusion. So, ooh, I just got chills.
I got chills.
I know you did too. I just saw you, and then suddenly they went through me. And that is the thing is that you are me, I am you. We are one. We are
Mhm.
our souls choose to incarnate into these dense bodies to experience contrast
Mhm.
and to experience density.
Yeah.
But to say that we are separate from God or God is above us, that we are now, listen, we do not, in these bodies, obviously, we're not going to reflect the brilliance of the light of God or the quote unquote other side, which is really not somewhere else. It's within us, it's everywhere, but we are contained. So it's that somebody has described it as you're in a dark cave and you have a flashlight. So all you can see is what's in front of the light from the flashlight. But if you were to turn on all the lights, you'd see there's so much there. Therefore, yeah, maybe we don't live as we're purely and as brilliant, and we are not experiencing pure peace, love, and bliss in this realm. It doesn't mean that we're not worthy. It just means that we're limited, like you said, and we are indoctrinated, we are traumatized, we are shaped by our life experiences, we are indoctrinated out of remembering who we are so that
Mhm.
we think we're smaller, we think we're bad, and sometimes we do bad things because we out of fear. But that doesn't mean that our essence, our soul is not still God. And so for me and for you, when we are, for example, channeling,
Mhm.
soul reading, whatever it is we're doing, all we're doing is remembering ourselves and encouraging our clients, our friends, whoever we're reading to remember who they are
Mhm.
and reminding them of the connection that don't people ask you all the time, am I still connected to my loved one? Do they remember me? Do they miss me? And I tell them
Mhm.
you're not going to like the answer, but they don't miss you because they are not separate from you. They're more part of you than they've ever been. So when they're like, "Oh, your
Mhm.
dad misses you." I'm like, "You miss your dad.
Mhm.
Your dad is in you, part of you, everywhere all around you and more connected than ever." It's just sometimes people that do what we do are just demonstrating to them. That's why evidential psychic medium. All I'm doing is the evidence is to prove to you that your dad isn't dead. The body has
Right.
decayed. The soul is as alive as it's ever been. Energy is never destroyed. It only changes form. And that energy includes
Mhm.
consciousness. So your dad's consciousness is still here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, anything you want to add to that?
Oh,
I don't, I want to be mindful of your time, but I do have another question if you do have time.
I do have time. And
Okay.
and I love that you said that too, because it is indeed that. So I would not have called it mediumship at the very beginning because what I would have to explain to them, it's not like this is interesting, is that like sometimes it feels like conversational,
Yeah.
but it's more of I'm highly visual. I get
Mm,
images. And so it's like describing the image. I'll get sensations and emotions that come through myself. And it's like I'm not conjuring them. It's like whoever was present. And then sometimes in these sessions that I have, not all the time do loved ones come through. Sometimes they
mhm.
seek me out specifically for that, but other times not so much. I have a really cool experience to actually share with you because it
Please
happened
do.
at IANS when it was in Phoenix.
Oh,
So,
I just want to say I had so many wild experiences there.
uh-huh.
Oh, the
Yes.
energy of all of us together.
Oh, exactly. In one unified place with over 800 people, it's incredible. Yeah. So last year in Phoenix, I was in what's called the one of the healing rooms. I was one of the healing practitioners. And so I donated my time for people to have sessions. And
Mhm.
so I chose to do this over like 2 or 3 days. And um, I love that, just whoever comes in. So in that moment, I had a beautiful gentleman come, and it was his first time at IANS, and he was a doctor, and whose mom had just passed away. Well, in between sessions, I always make sure to go out into the sun, and I do like this whole process to like kind of cleanse and just release the energy. And it's also to help ground me and then open, to have an open heart and just be present for whatever might want to come through. And as I'm walking back inside, there's this little feather, little dove feather. And I'm like, ooh. And I hear in my mind, like, give this to the person. So I'm like, oh, okay. Don't think twice of it. I pick it up and I take it inside and, I set it aside on the table that I was at. And I just happened to be having conversation with this person who's brand new, a medical doctor, had an experience with his mom and after her passing, and that opened him up into wanting to understand and have this a place for, through the International Association for Near Death Studies, it does open up to many medical, and that's how it started, medical professionals whose clients were having these experiences, and that's how IANS was created. And so as I'm sharing with him and during this, short little 20-minute session, I pulled a little feather and I said, I'm supposed to give this to you. And his eyes, and he just began to like ever so gently, cry. And he says, I can't believe this. I was just having a conversation with my mom this morning. I saw a dove fly by and I said, Mom, is that you? And I'm like, I don't know what the feather means. All I know is that I'm following the guidance that was given. Give this feather to him. I gave it to him. And then he conveys to me like all of this. And so the dove feather given to him because he asked the question, Mom, is that you? Are you here with me? And then so how like the beauty and the perfection and the divine intelligence that flows through, that if we're just present to be, that's what a medium is. The medium is the person who can convey and share the messages, you know? And so for me, it's like I'm tapping into what I call that sacred living library. The information streams from such an incredible higher place of consciousness that I don't, like, I can see them clearly in my mind's eye, but there's just something more extraordinary and expansive of what we are all a part of, that field of energy. Quantum physics, the field, it's the 0 point field. It's the source of all energy. And so I love to incorporate that too, because I feel like in quantum physics and certain sciences are just using different language to describe spiritual things, but they're describing the same thing, just using different languages and looking at it from a different perspective, a different angle. And so, but it all fits. It all, one does not negate the other. That if we open up and into this perspective, is that every single thing has its place and its source is the all. So, yeah, that's a really exciting thing.
I
So
love the way
please
you
ask another question
I
too.
love that. I love what you just said. I wanted to ask, this is a big question, but
Okay.
you have said this in other interviews, but I've also been feeling it, and I think we all have, that this is I keep thinking I got chills. I cannot believe the time that we're living in. And
Mm,
it has occurred to me that, okay, crazy things have happened in history forever. But right now it feels like it's all coming to a head in a way that I'm like, I cannot believe. If you told somebody in 1900 that we were close to disclosure that UFOs are real, that the president, the things that are happening in this world with the president that we have, and that's, again, I'm really open minded politically in terms of I can hear both sides. So I'm not making any kind of, this isn't a disparaging comment as much as this is whether you support our president or you don't, the things that he is doing are unprecedented. The upheaval, I feel like we're on the verge of some kind of a revolution.
Mhm.
Then the war in the Middle East, the conflict in the Middle East, not the, I mean, it's been going on for forever and ever and ever, but it has really come to like a crazy head.
Mhm.
Um, Things are getting bananas. And I keep thinking of all the timelines I could have incarnated into. Of course, I'm sure I've lived 100 others. And so
Mhm.
maybe it's not really that special. Maybe it's just, here's another one. I can't believe I'm alive at this time. I can't believe what's happening. And I wanted
Mhm.
to ask you what you think is going on right now, because this is like, what's about to happen? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on right now? This is insane.
Yeah. Okay. I love that you said this because I have had the hardest time trying to figure out exactly how to silo myself. Okay. So it's like, am I a medium? Am I a psychic? Am I a psychic medium? Is it a healer, an energy worker, or like a therapist, or like the soul reader, wisdom keeper, like all of these. And I'm like, it's all of it. It's all of it. And that there's not one just generic, like one singular path. So I, like you, have recognized, and this is probably the biggest thing, is I can finally say, I remember who I am. I remember where I am from, and I know what I'm here to do. And I like now looking back and seeing like through my two children, also having this like star essence. Then there's a term that's being used, of course, star seeds, but all of us are that. We all originate, from a very divine source. And that, that's evidenced by our telomeres and our this chromosome manipulation where that was actually spliced, okay? That was actually done by a particular, higher essence. And there are technologies and there are connections on this planet from other parts of our own galaxy, but also neighboring galaxies. One thing my mom did actually have is like a deep awareness of her star connection. Now, I'll just pause for a moment and explain that in my own family's lineage, okay, so I live in New Mexico. I live in an area where we have some of the most beautiful cultures and also tribes. So we have several pueblos and tribes here in my state. We have Chaco Canyon here, of all places, which is actually modeled after its archaeoastronomically developed, where it mirrors the Pleiadian system. So these old structures are placed in position in alignment with the Pleiades. There's also like the connection with other what's called Pueblo Bonito and other places that were built here in Chaco Canyon and in New Mexico. We have the Hopi and the Zuni. And so there is like the Hopi prophecy, and then even the Zuni, the people that understood that they first originated out of, what they would call the ant people from a time when we all had to be under the earth. There are many other places on the planet where they have understood this. And so we have star connections on this planet. So when I think of in that NDE, I'm not the NDE, sorry, in the regression that I had for the past life, I understood that I was toggling between two places. It happened to be over the course of 300 years. The place that was both very arid as well as very lush and very green. And I understood that to be like Egypt. And then we see Egypt now as arid and dry. But at one time when we were there, it was lush and green and very humid. Okay. And then having this ancient knowledge is also in the Maya culture. Okay, and that most planets or most of these ancient teachings will actually say that they're after the time of the flood, there were people that emerged from the sea that actually taught us all of these things. People can look that up. It's mind-boggling. Okay, I know I'm digressing. I'll come back to the question, which I hope to remember. Okay, that we were on the planet ourselves to try to open up an avenue and guide humanity. That incarnation that I had at that time, I wanted to teach and help the people. And I love this planet so much of its potential that that's why I wanted to be here then. And that's why I want to be here now. And that the path that I was going prior to my NDE was shutting it all down. So my mom had an awareness of the connection of her stars. Her grandmother on her father's side, so my grandpa Antonio, his mother was 100% native. Now we had a huge tragedy that happened here in New Mexico where people were indoctrinated and they were taken and removed from their pueblos and their tribes and actually placed into like these teaching schools where they were basically, they lost a lot of their ancient culture and their own history and their own experiences because of this. Okay. So I have that actually is in my own lineage. So my own great grandmother was, they thought that either she was either Hopi or Zuni, but at one time they were all connected from, I have a friend of mine who lives in Zuni Pueblo, born and raised and brought up in the tradition and the culture. And so there are seated knowledges on this planet that would hope that we would always arrive at this particular time. It was not known that we would. The Maya were master keepers of not just times and cycles. They were observing the planetary bodies of our solar system for an age. The calendar system that they have is so profound, and that's where the December 21st 2012 came in. It was the foretelling of a time and an age of which this new cycle would begin. There's the Kali Yuga, with the understanding of the different grand cycles of time also, that also depicted this to be a profound time on the planet. But we've never been able to arrive. We are in this fifth, like, cycle, this fifth age that is on the planet. When we would say that we're moving from 3D to 5D, okay, from third density to fifth density, whether you use dimension and density, there's a debate there. But we're in this fourth, and we've emerged since 2012 into the fifth age. But it was always uncertain if we would have the ability to ever arrive, or would we digress and go backwards. Now, some watching this might say, like, oh, yeah, we're digressing. The things are so bad on the planet. I'm like, no, we're progressing. That these things are coming up so that they can come out, and that things that were hidden in the shadows is now fully in full light. And we're seeing this other energy that has been on the planet for the age, that has been trying to manipulate it, to take our essence away, to diminish the power of a human self, the divinity and the God that we carry inside, the spark of God, and when I say that there is this other energy that has been on the planet, there is a discussion of saying like they were after the gold, right? Which is a mineral. Yeah, there's gold is a mineral on the planet, and it is a scarce and rare and element, but they were for the gold that we carry inside of ourselves. It's like if I was to remove a slice of my physical body and we look at our soul's anatomy, we would see this most magnificent star soul energy spiraling inside, like this golden essence. And the power that we give is incredible. The energy that we exude and radiate and connect is so powerful. It is of essence of gold, okay? To use the soul's power for creation. So the world that wants us to stay restricted in the lack and limitation and wars and fires and all of these things that are occurring, that's only one layer. This other layer that was foretold is that we would awaken into the remembrance of our soul self, that we would awaken and begin to connect with a higher essence and to finally return to divinity, that we would operate in a very, very different place, that we would never even consider harming another, for we know that harming them, because they are me, I am them, I'm hurting myself. So in the Orion system, in Sirius A and B, in the Sirius system, we have the Sumerians, we have other ancient cultures, we have the Pleiadians, we have Andromedans, we have people from Lyra and Draco and all of these other solar and star systems that are drawn to this planet. And all of that is active right now. So even the Hopi, when they actually talk about like when the blue Kachina, there was actually a star system in the universe that actually went supernova, and that would usher in a time of when new energy, new essence. Now, it's all cosmically orchestrated. There is a divine intelligence that orchestrates the universe, and that it would be the hope that the planet would be able to elevate in consciousness to be able to connect with this. Now, that requires that we return to nature, return to the balance of nature, being custodians of nature, protectors of nature, and also to be attuned and to live in this way. And one thing that I'm also extremely passionate about is understanding the essence of the days and the cycles. That the Gregorian calendar, removes us further and further from truth of ourself. We have to manipulate time, we're constantly changing the time. This is interesting. So there's satellites that actually do, cycle the planet, and our GPS systems have to constantly recalibrate to this time. The further away we get from the planetary system, the difference in time. Okay, so we're literally having to manually alter time here on the planet. People can look it up for themselves. It's just a brief description and explanation of what I'm trying to bring in. And then talking about the Gregorian calendar, right? So that in our calendar system, it's evidential. Right now, we're in the month of October. It is the 10th month of our year, but the prefix is octagon, octo, okay, oct, which means eight, okay? When we go into November, it is like even nueve, nine. It actually is the symbol of nine. When we go into December, so like a decade, that means 10, but it's our 12th month of the year. And why is it that some months have, 28 days, and then we have a leap year once every 4 years where they add an extra day? I mean, it's insanity of how much we manipulate time and energy around us. But when we come back to original time, true essence, true cycles, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the sun, then we rediscover an essence of ourselves. And so we're here on this planet at this time to awaken into that divinity and to open up into another entire possibility on this planet. And there are two things that are happening. There is the duality, the density, the heaviness, all the struggles that are happening, the things with our political systems, the people that are in office, all of these grand scale things, all of that is indeed truth. But because we live in duality, one cannot exist without the other. So just as this increase of, volatile energy is happening, because the universe is always seeking balance in the world of duality, its equal and its opposite also has to exist. It has to. And so there is the heavy, the darkness, the shadows, and the difficulties. But there's also the light, the beauty, the goodness, the return to nature and connection and unity. And we know where we are at by how we feel. Now, is there literally two earths? Some would say yes, but it's energetic. We know where we at by how we feel. There are some days where it's very heavy, where I can fall into, the state of the world. And I have to really work with myself to be able to bring my energy out of that heavy density because I want to serve something entirely different. So that requires our personal work. That's what our spiritual practices are for, is to be able to help attune. It's like we are a radio device. There are all of these streaming energies happening all around us, but where am I attuned to? Where is the preset of my radio stations? What am I connected into? And so when we actually work with it, is I can go there quickly and I can watch things that bring my energy down in a really huge way. But then I am participating and engaging in that. So yes, I'm aware that it's there. And then I best serve by providing another frequency on the planet that is of goodness, of hope, of beauty, of truth. And that's where we are our energy. So why was it never known, or like there could never really fully pinpoint exactly? There was always the potential and a possibility of this new earth at this time, but it required enough people on the planet to be awakened to their soul self in order for that to happen. And thank God that there was enough people who were able to hold that vibration on the planet that was opening up and then ushering in of all of this incredible, beautiful possibility and potential. And that's where the term, indigo children. I had an opportunity to meet the gentleman who channels Cryon at a conference here in Santa Fe, and where back in the 70s and 80s foretold these children that were going to be born, known as indigo children. And so there are children that are souls that emanate from these higher places within the universe and within our own galaxy, that have this deep understanding so that they could begin to bring it into the planet. And many of those children are born to first and second generation. Like from my case, I'm second generation. My mom was very attuned. And in fact, we have a video where she was, they were, what is it? You're a voice. I know you're a voice actor, right? Okay. So we had 38 millimeter videos from when I was like 4 years old in Mexico. Okay. 3 and 4 years old. And so they had to narrate it. They were trying to describe what was happening in the scene. And so my brother compiled this together. And at the very, very end, God bless my mama, she's already passed over since 2017. But at the time that this was recorded, she actually leaves us a message, and she says, and if you're watching this for the future generations, and if I am not here, you'll find me on Orion. So I'm
Wow.
like, okay, so she had awareness. She didn't talk about it so openly when I was a child, so only as an older adult did she. And then I recognized that with my own children. Like my son's had some extraordinary experiences. He was the one that was born 10 weeks early. And so there's a new energy on this planet that's being ushered in by the souls being born. And those who have that are older, such as us, that are remembering, and reconnecting into this so that we can bring something new in. This is one of the most profound times that we are actually experiencing an evolution on the planet. So I love that you said revolution, right? Because I'm like, yeah, it's a revolution of evolution. Okay. Because we are evolving, we are awakening to the etheric layers of energy of which we are, and that's bringing something entirely new. And so when we talk about light workers, grid workers, soul workers, energy workers, these are people that have been chosen to incarnate all over the globe because we create a living network of this energy that embodies the whole planet, and that we serve in a greater capacity because of it. So I have connections, and I do channel, these other higher beings from, these other planetary systems. And that's a lot to go into at the moment. But I feel that the NDE was just the opening to reattune. And then there's all of this, like a whole magnitude of spiritually transformative experiences that it opened up to. And so I feel like when they talk about the thinning of the veil, it's like we're just removing the binds and the bindings that constrict ourselves to be limited and helpless and hopeless, and instead opens up into this other vibration. And when people have a spiritual awakening, I know so many people that are having these experiences without having to experience a death trauma. And that's oftentimes what past life regression could actually be. Is that what is the influence of a past life that could be infecting you now? And then being able to transition to that to bring in the knowledge, the awareness, and then what is the lesson? What is the thing that is there to learn? And if they can grasp that, then they have fulfilled the potential of their life in the time that they chose to incarnate. So, this is one of the absolute most profound times on earth to have this entire awakening and shift and change. And that if we have the ability to see beyond what is, so we don't get trapped into what is, that we can look beyond into the potential of what could be. Okay. And that's why we're here. It's such an exciting time. Like, so many people, so many souls who want to incarnate, that there's like a waiting list on the other side, because souls are like, oh my God, what's happening to the earth? I want to be there at this time, for to be at the front line to experience the soul change on the planet rather than seeing it from an external outside perspective. So it's an incredible, beautiful time that many have foretold in different indigenous and ancient cultures on the planet, and we're living it. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so incredible.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we all need, I was going to say a little hope. I think a lot of hope right now. And I feel the same that even though some
Mm,
really, really difficult things are happening, it's exciting because it's signaling a shift, a massive shift. It's coming to a head in a way that we're either going to destroy ourselves or we are going to evolve. And I really don't think that it is our destiny to destroy ourselves. And it's also my hope that the ETs will not let that happen,
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
there will be, uh, we've already had contact,
mm-hmm,
they're already here, but
mm-hmm,
that it's going to become commonplace to recognize that they're here, to interact with them in peaceful ways and learn from them, because it is my belief that they're here to help us for the most part. And I believe personally that any ETs that are considered to be hostile are only here hostile because of they're being attacked or they're being shot down or their defense mechanisms just happen to be harmful to humans. But and I don't know that there aren't also negative ones that have negative intent. But I also think that part of it is just that we humans have such a limited belief. It's just like all the movies back, Close
mm-hmm.
Encounters, E.T., so many
Encounters
more.
of the third kind. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yes, that
Mm-hmm.
we live in such a state of fear and we assume that aliens, other, is a threat, are a threat, and even human beings against human beings, which is part of the problem we're facing now, is that we see one another as that other. We other one another. And we do the
Mm-hmm.
same with ETs, as they must be a threat. What do they want? Well, if they wanted to destroy us or take over the planet, they would have done it already. They
Because they
have
have the
technology.
technology.
They have the technology to do it. They're
Yeah.
here to help us. They're here to help us evolve. They're here to learn from us. And they're here to stop us from destroying ourselves. And of course, if you shoot at them, well, they have to defend themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
my hope is that I'm excited. I'm like, bring it on, because we can really use their intervention and their knowledge and their wisdom. So I welcome it. And
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that we can meet them without fear and with love and ask them, what can we learn from you? And
Mm-hmm.
thank you for being here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think I love that you said that about movies, like like all these movies. I believe that truly, if anything that it happens on this planet must happen with consent. And so much of it is that because nothing happens against our will, right? That we are here in a system where divine will, hopefully, will be our own personal will. Now, many of us do not agree with what is happening on the planet. We would say, like, I never gave my consent for this. But being alive and born into it and indoctrinated, as you've mentioned, is a form of free will. There is
Mm,
a way that our systems are created. The first one primarily being economic. Our economic systems bind us to it. I can't go to a store and say, here, I'm going to trade a chicken, so that I
mhm,
can get some lettuce. Okay, that used to be a barter system back in the day. But this energy is like, in order for me to operate in my world, I have to abide by the systems that were created. And if these systems were created by beings that actually receive benefit by the absconding of our soul's energy, right? We wake up, we go to work, we go through life, and it feels like a struggle. We own nothing because we have mortgages, and they could take that away at any moment. Like every single thing that has been created in this system is a system that we were born into. So first we give consent because we understand what we're being born into. And then when enough of us do not consent to this is where change is made. This is
yeah.
where the revolutions happen. This is where change comes into the planet. And you're absolutely right that I think that the other part of it, we give consent by, and also this embedding in our own subconscious. So movies that have been portrayed with these intelligent beings being here, like, so I think of, God, Independence Day, or I think of Fourth Kind, or I think of other movies that have depicted them, Predator, okay? Like these really scary things that we have to be so fearful of, that it seeds the consciousness of humanity to have a certain feeling or a belief around it. And so it seeds the population with a belief system through our media, through the movies, through the books that we read. But simultaneously, that there are others. So like I think of the first movie, Avatar, the first one.
I was
Okay.
just thinking Avatar as soon as I was listening to you, I was thinking about the Avatar movies. Hmm.
Uh-huh. I was obsessed with that movie. Oh my God,
The
when it
second
first
one was
came
better
out.
than the first one, I thought.
Okay. Yeah, there are so many energies that are out there that is like depicting this. And that is also in the consciousness, right? So if we think about it, there's a streaming energy that is like what I call again the consciousness, that telepathy is real. I can't tell you how many times I do this with my daughter and close friends and my sister, that is actually real. They can feel us from the distance. And that there's two things happening simultaneously. So I think of also like personal experiences, people who have had the courage to share their personal experience. I think of Shirley MacLaine with Out on a Limb. That was also very, very transformative. So there's truth embedded with all this false energy. And that's why we have to be so discerning with everything that is out there. How do I feel? How does this make me feel? And is this something that feels good? Okay, then if it does, then pursue it. If we're uncertain, then we can take a step back and kind of observe and watch. And then if there's an innate instinctive knowing, like, no, that doesn't feel good. That's a guidance system that we have an ability to connect into. And so I'm in total agreement that there's like so much that is happening upon the planet that they have already been here. Now, I live in New Mexico. There's no coincidence for me to live here. I have the Sandia Labs. I have Los Alamos Labs. We have um, the White Sands and the southern part. There's like so much in this state alone of like that ushers in this time. And so there are, and even in Dulce, New Mexico, there's the thought that there is an underground base that actually holds living species, from other planets and other systems. If we talk about the Sandia Labs in the Sandia Mountains, we have an Air Force base here. That there's so much that is like under base. There's a thought that there's this underground, system that connects us from here directly to Area 51. So there's so much that happens underneath the surface, but they give just enough for humanity to consent, just enough to kind of put it into the ethers of where, and then if we're not fighting against it, then we must consent to it. So
Mhm.
there's a lot that's actually happening. And this is why, yeah, it is the most beautiful time of revolution, of evolution, because we're changing inside so we can change the outside. And that we do have assistance and support from these, yes, some that are the ones that are negative are already here. They've been here. They've been the ones who have absconded the earth and created these systems to begin with. And they work with many of the elite, and we can get into all kinds of conspiracy theory here,
Mm.
but it's truth. Okay. But then now, with humanity's awakening and connecting into the spirit, there is so much more out there that is of goodness to assure that the planet isn't going to destroy ourselves, that CERN isn't going to create a black hole with the colliding of the particles, right? That there's so and even the stopping of particular like nuclear bases. So we'll hear of stories of like there were lights in the sky that completely shut down the missile ranges of these different bases. That they are very attuned to what is happening on the planet, and that they have already many times intervened. And so there's so much more happening that we can't even really fully begin to understand the grandness of it all. But through it all, a divine intelligence that operates. And that if we can bring ourself and our spirit to where what we think, what we feel, what we connect to, what we offer, what we choose to do in a day to day, we contribute. And I even say that there are sometimes, not sometimes, I would say that it is like those beings that sit in the silence and the privacy of their own space, doing their meditations and offering a sense of goodness, radiate and ripple out an energy that helps and assists the world. So when someone is like, well, what can I do to change all of this? Attune, connect, meditate, pray, send your signals to the earth for human hope, and that actually contributes to this grid that I'm speaking of. There is such incredible value for every single person doing it, because where there is one, there are more. And one light offsets, so much darkness. And I love to use this example. So like I have here just a simple matchbox, okay? And inside of it, it's closed. You can't see anything inside. So right now there's darkness inside of this box. And then the moment that I open the box, light floods in. Never have we opened a box that has darkness, where darkness has then all of a sudden come out and consumed the light of the room. The light always comes in. And so the darkness is the container for the potential of light. And if we look at it and understand it that way, it serves. There's something much greater and the way that it all works. And so holding onto that seed of hope inside of our own soul spark and ourself, it makes a difference. We contribute. So I know I went into a bunch of different little segues there, but I love these conversations,
I do
obviously.
too. Yeah, no, like I said, everything you said was so valuable and so insightful. And I know it's only validating what's been coming up for me as I've
Mhm.
been thinking about this, deep diving into this, watching people speak about it, interact with people like you. And so I am very grateful for your time and energy
Mhm.
and your friendship, because it
Mhm.
is so wonderful to be connected with people who are um, also thinking similarly, but also just, as I said, we're all one. So I always consider people
Mhm.
a friend just because I know
Yes.
that we're part of one another, but it's to find kindred spirits that are on the same sort of journey and that have things to share that I may not have thought of, and that for us to inspire one another. That's why I do this podcast. A friend of mine
Mhm.
texted me today and she's like, "Tell me about podcasting. Like, what do you do? Like, are you getting paid for it? Like, why do does the person get paid for it?" And I was going to leave her a message
Mhm.
back, but I was like, I need time, because what it is I I don't get paid for it. Like I think I make
Mhm.
$15 a month from this at this point, but and my guests don't either. And apart from the
Mhm.
fact that yes, we might offer services and we're putting the word out, that's not why we do this.
Right.
It's because we want to share this information, but create community around the
Mhm.
conversation, inspire people, take the fear out of death, um,
Mhm.
give people hope in dark times, give people solace, help others heal the way that we have and that we continue to do. To just to it can be a very scary place. It's a place to come together for us to lift each other up. And like
Mhm.
and so for me at least, I know that's why you do it too. It's we do this to be of service. And if
Yes.
there's money, great, because we all need to make a living. Um, Energy exchange and all that, as you've discussed, it's like, yes, we do have to charge for our services because that's how we're spending our time and energy. And we all need to make a living. And that's just the society that we live in because we
Mhm.
don't barter a chicken anymore. We can't just
Yes.
say, here's a chicken for this, for these beans. It's, I wish we could live like that, but we don't.
Mhm.
And yet, what you do is valuable, what I do is valuable, and everyone has something to contribute that's valuable. And that's why we have to put a dollar amount on everything we do. Wish we didn't, but that's just the way it is. And yet, that's not why we do it. It's
Correct.
that we
I
want to
love that you said that.
yeah, it's we want to
Yes.
spend our time doing this. So
Yes.
that's why we need to get paid because otherwise we have to work full time, which I do now. I also have other
Mhm.
jobs,
Mhm.
and yet I want to be doing this work full time. And in order to do that,
Mhm.
so I don't have to spend my entire day doing something for, for the paycheck
Somebody else.
for
Mhm.
somebody else. Yeah, we want to be able to be doing something for somebody else in a way that's, mutually beneficial, but from a soul perspective. And so I
Absolutely.
appreciate what you do so much. And I'm so happy to have connected with you. And I'd love to have you on again. I feel like we could have a million more hours of
Yeah.
conversation. So I want to thank you too for just spending so
Yeah.
much time. And I will have your website listed, which basically gives all the information about what services you offer and anything else you want to know. But is there anything else that you'd like to share um,
Mm.
about something that you might offer or events coming up or anything of that nature, or just last words you'd like to say for now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I mentioned really briefly, yes, that like the website is perfect and where people can find me and discover what I offer and what's available. But you're absolutely right that this really is about the fulfillment of a purpose. That when I have these most beautiful conversations with people such as yourself that are connected into this, is that we are fulfilling the purpose of which we're here for. And then also that understanding is that, yes, that we are all entitled into making a living, and that may we all evolve into that place of where the gift that we carry is the main source. And I think that that's a beautiful way of opening it up into honoring. It took me a very long time. I've been doing this I've been in this world for 25 years. I've been doing this professionally for about 16, 17 years. And it's taken that long to even have comfort because so many of us who do spiritual work even have a discomfort with even understanding, exchange and monetary exchange and our ability to make a living and all of those things. But I do have, I showed my mesa earlier, so I've been in this particular practice and it's called an IU. An IU is like a word that means family and gathering. And so I also am assisting and helping. She's a mentor of mine. Her name is Sally Moon, and she is opening up, and I'm assisting her with bringing these indigenous teachings and all also around the moon. And so it's called Walk the Sacred Path of the Jaguar. Jaguar represents the direction of the West. The West has everything to do with shadow and darkness. And so it's like incorporating the wisdom from our shadow. And so she's offering, and through her, and I'm assisting her, offering up all like many different sacred indigenous teachings. And so she has them many available just for free. I know that she's going to be teaching a class here coming up pretty soon of which I will assist her with. But and that's called Walk the Sacred Path of the Jaguar. Maybe I can even just send you a link to that if
Yeah, that would
people
be
are
great.
interested. And as a matter of fact, I did that just before we connected. We had a new moon preparation session that she intends to put on YouTube, but to help people attune and prepare for the new moon that's coming up on Tuesday. And again, that's to align us with natural divine time. And so those are available also. So again, it's, we're not just siloed into one thing, but that there are so many things. So I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share that as well. So I'm really excited to be able to bring these indigenous teachings in a sacred way, and there are many layers and depths of it. But what people can do as a beginning, to understand, and like so some practices that they can attune to and help them shift into this new way of thinking and being. So that's also available.
Thank you. That really interests me as well.
Mm.
Thank you again so much for being here, Maria
Mm.
Lupita Gurule. It has been a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to having you here again.
Absolutely. I welcome it. I could talk. This is my passion.
Mine too.
Obviously, like goes everywhere. And I love that we could share and resonate with one another. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you do. And yeah, I just feel like I'm busting at the seams. So anytime I have opportunities to share as much as I can, I am in deep gratitude. So thank you for you taking the time to be able to bring this to the world and for inviting me to share. Thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.